OBS things. Can you hear me all right? Can you not? Are we good? How's the mic? My audio mix is doing strange things, so I can't quite see my audio levels at the minute, which is frustrating. But no one's telling me I'm muted yet, so it looks like I'm doing okay. Am I doing okay? Give me a wave. Fantastic, you can hear me. Great stuff. Well, first of all, good evening to Space Saga, to Matt, to Socially, Macho, good to see you, buddy. Chief Paranoid, Socially, Brian, Monster AV, good to see you, bud. Been a little bit of time. Stack, Viper Leo, Single Track, Marcus, Ashra, to Ray, and everyone else. C. McD, awesome, good to see you all. Yeah, so it was all going so well. I had my character positioned at the top of Art Court Plaza in the at ease position, stood on the platform of the missile turret, and then all of a sudden the game went completely wibble and decided that it didn't want to work, and then it crashed, which was the ba-ding you heard probably during the music. So there we go. Carlton, good, welcome in, buddy. Glad that you made it. So yeah, so that's where we are at the moment, and we have an awful lot to talk about, mainly because I've not streamed the last couple of weeks, and I'll come on to that in a second, other than the news announcements at the end of last week. So we'll cover all that sort of stuff. We're going to look at the Odin, we're going to look at the other ships for Defensecon, we're going to have a look at what's coming out, we're going to have a look at all of the progress reports and the roadmap and all that good stuff. There's plenty to get through. It's going to be a quick, or I say a quick one, it's going to be a busy one, which will make it feel quick, I think. But first things first, happy Sunday. I'm going to break my normal rule of not drinking on a school night by drinking on a school night. Henry Weston's, seeing as Stowfeds are being awful at offering me a sponsorship deal. If you guys want to, I'd love to. So yeah, this stuff is kind of like rocket fuel. It's the same stuff that I was drinking at the start of the CitizenCon Direct stream, for those people that remember that abomination. This stuff is like 8.2%. So if it starts to go downhill rapidly, at least you guys know why. So there you go. Voice is out of sync, is it? Okay, well, let's see. I might jump around on streams and see if that fixes things, but hopefully not too much of an issue. Basically, the GoPro that I've been using as a webcam, for some reason, although I left it in, the charge has gone from it. So I'm on the old face cam, which might or might not affect the quality, I'm not sure, but that might be explaining the lag. So there we go. So cheers, everyone. Happy Sunday. Happy last moments before Defensecon and the Ironclad and the Odin and all that madness happens. So yeah, here's to the last few days of sanity before all that kicks in. Cheers. So yeah, that's where we're starting out. I might get another one of those. That's going down quite well, actually, to be fair. Okay, so before we get into the Battlecruiser, just going to give it a couple minutes to let those, that are kind of dragging the heels a little join. I just want to talk about where we are with content and stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that I've promised you guys coming in for the first couple of months that hasn't materialised, and I feel like I owe it to you guys to explain. Basically, I'm in a bit of a weird spot at the moment. I don't know how much to kind of give away, because it starts to sound a little bit excusey. Basically, it's not the content that's the issue. It's other things. So it's stuff to do with work, and basically my body creates a lot of cortisol at the moment, which is the chemical that your body creates to deal with stress. So it keeps you awake, keeps you alert, keeps you surging on, when all of a sudden you're tired and then something serious happens. In part it's adrenaline, in part it's cortisol, which allows you to kind of deal with those things. My body doesn't stop making it at the moment, unfortunately. So despite the fact that I'm physically exhausted, my brain won't let me sleep. And, like most people, tell me if this is kind of familiar to you, but when you get overtired, it's very easy to get negative about stuff, and you're kind of, for want of a better word, a bullshit filter drops to zero. And your ability to tolerate nonsense evaporates. That's where I've been, and normally when that happens, it's really easy. I have a sleep, and I feel better. Except I can't. And being in an overly negative headspace about everything or just being simply exhausted and unable to string two words together is not the greatest space to be to stream or make videos. So that's where we are. How I get out of this? Good question. I don't know. I'd like to have been out of this quite some time ago. But you'll remember kind of like towards the end of last year I had to take some time off. This seems to be basically kind of like almost a relapse of that. So that's where we are. It's not there for sympathy. I just want to explain to you guys that whilst there is a lot of content that I promise you guys is not coming, I will get to it. I promise. I will refuse, and hopefully you understand this, I refuse to put out stuff that I'm not happy with. I would much rather give you 2 or 3 videos that I'm happy with than 12 or 14 that are utter garbage. So that's where we are, and there we go. So yeah, I'm also doing my best to resist the urge to self-medicate for sleep. But tonight that's going out the window, so there we go. Marcus, I'm sorry that happened, bud, yet very much like that. Sounds like your baseline state. Yeah, Matt, it's rough. Anxiety all the time, stuck. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like one time I just heard a song. I couldn't stop it playing in my head. Didn't matter what I did, whether I listened to actual music, whether I was watching something else, whether I was talking to myself, could not get the song out of my head. And it was a crap song. So there we go. Who's joining the Founders Club, says Enkinsune. Well, we'll talk about that in just a sec, because this is what we're talking about. Now, I've managed to find the model. Someone linked, I found it. Someone linked it in the Discord, link to which, by the way, is in the description below. This is what we're looking at. This is the Odin. They've taken the 3D model from the holographic experience and put it somewhere where we can manipulate it and have a look. So this is what we're going to have a look at. And then, we are going to have a look at a whole bunch of other stuff. Other images that have been released, size comparisons. So we will get to those 100%. So we can manipulate this quite nicely. We've got some really large looking turrets hanging off the side. In fact, we've got turrets pretty much everywhere. The ones that really interest me are the 3 and 1 cannon ones up on the top here. Right? These are quite interesting to me because I have a feeling that what they do, if you look at the shape, I have a feeling they recess into the hull and that becomes flat. Right? So I think the barrels withdraw slightly and then it all sits down and connects and it sits flush with the hull. So you'll absolutely see that kind of like open up. And the same thing here, right? The barrel here will recess into this section. Yep, and then the rest of it here, you see the way the back is shaped up and then round. Yeah, may well recess in here. And you'll just get some kind of like ridges basically on the top there that indicate where that is. It also looks like these bits on the side, although I don't think they are weapon systems, look like they might recess as well, which is kind of cool. All of the big guns recess, says Soshi. You reckon? Absolutely. Jock Cop, good to see you, buddy. There's what look like flak cannons at the back. Okay, let's have a look. So there's another turret there, and you've got, yeah, some long map. So Warhammer players would know these as kind of Hydra autocannons. If you know the reference, you know, if you know, you know. And there's obviously the ones on the side of the turret as well, which unfortunately seem to default into pointing down, which result in a rather unfortunate kind of like droopy silhouette. Looks like this thing needs a pill or 3 to help it out. Just saying. There's a couple of other things that I've spotted. I like the kind of radar dome bit. I feel someone's just said, who said it? Go on, I'll engage with this because I agree with you. Someone said it looks like Battleship Yamato anime. And you are 100% correct. That's exactly what it looks like. It looks like if you let a kid take a warship and then change some of the key lines, but make it something that floats in space as it floats in the water, it looks like this is what would come out of it. So there's that. So we're going to talk through everything. We're going to talk through crewing and functionality and some of the other images and all that sort of stuff. So we will get to that in a second. I'm just going to start off with what we see on the outside first. So we are going to get there, I promise. Yeah. And that's why I think kind of these sorts of bits that stick out here, I think they're sensor probes or something else. I don't think they're weapons because they don't look like they move, and they're really odd angles to be weapon systems. You've then got underneath a similar turret arrangement, although reversed. So you've got the single turret and then the triple turret. Front here, you've got it the other way around. You've got the triple turret to the fore and then the single turret down aft. So, yeah, there's that. Now, one of the things I want to talk about are these things here. And I wonder if these are our hangars. Given the size of it, I wonder if these are fighter hangars. Because I had a look, and on top, nothing, unless we're going to have an angled kind of roof. I wonder how much, where they were going to have some sort of fighter or, kind of service craft. Maybe this section at the back. Maybe that whole thing opens up, I don't know. And that explains some of the depth. Because when you see this against the Javelin, this thing is higher, the central deck is higher than the Bengal. Which is weird when you consider how much the Bengal is. I think the Bengal is going to get chunkier, basically. But yeah, so yes, this might be, some sort of version of the MPUV thing. But then again, looking at the size of the turrets, and looking at the size of some of the weapon systems and the size of the bridge. I mean, if you think about the size of a person stood on that, and then you look at the size of those hangar doors versus, a person here, they're big enough to be fighter bays. Right, so that's really interesting. Timball, Parallels, Ziggs, welcome in everyone. Good to see you. We've gone up in viewers a little bit. So welcome in. We're having a look at the battlecruiser. This is the Odin from Anvil, the Anvil Cap Ship, and talking about the looks and everything else of it. There's also a really interesting kind of bay here. All right. Some sort of almost like an observation space. So you've very clearly got the bridge up the top. Yeah. But there's this very interesting sort of observation bay with what would be, this is actually on a lot of ships, it can house a radar system. It can also house on warships when you see this sort of thing. And also you'll see this on civilian ships as well, can house very powerful satellite communications. And what sits in there is a directional antenna that moves about inside. It's protected then by the ball. It also helps to mitigate some of the emissions so you don't fry people. Because some of the radars and some of the satellite communications, if you are close enough to them, they'll kill you. It's like being a human-sized microwave turned up to 11. They're incredibly powerful. So that's why you see that. I'm not saying that's coming to the game. I'm saying that they're copying that imagery, and that's why that imagery is so iconic. We also seem to have some form of backward-facing bridge as well. So we've got visibility on both sides, which kind of makes sense from a cool perspective. We also have, as well as the large number of things on on the front, these bits here, torpedo tubes, one imagines, or maybe those are the torpedo tubes. And these are something else. Could absolutely be a shield generator, McD. Yeah, you're not wrong. Feathers, welcome in, buddy. Good to see you. McGroofus, hello, mate. Yeah, loads of people in to have a look at the Odin. So yeah, you've almost got multiple potential, and bearing in mind as well, this is going to be rough, right? Just like we saw with the Perseus. The Perseus, when you saw the original concepts, the exterior was much more smooth, much more streamlined, and then it adds detail and further things. For example, we didn't have the point defense turrets when you saw the very first model of it. So yeah, there's a lot on here. The more I think about it, the more this looks like it might be some sort of ramp arrangement, right? That then extends down. So obviously that wouldn't sit as a ramp, but maybe then extends down further. So you might have something like this. Could be retro thrusters as well. Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of bits on the design that I kind of don't like. I don't like the battleship Yamato look. Right? There's a reason ships were long and thin back in the day, right? Like Yamato, like all of those sorts of warships. And that all had to do with hydrodynamics that don't apply in space, right? And the only reason that space ships are shaped the way they are in real life right now is because they have to re-enter atmosphere, therefore they must be vaguely plane shaped, right? This thing, I think it's safe to say, won't be landing on any planets, therefore aerodynamics are completely pointless. And actually what becomes important to it is, you know, it's kind of it's the form of function, right? It needs to be the shape that it needs to be to do its job to the best of its ability, because it doesn't have to deal with aerodynamics and lift and all that sort of stuff. What I find really interesting is this bit here, are these kind of channels that run through the ship. I don't know if they're intentional or not. It's an interesting choice if they are. Maybe there's some function there. If that's just a gap for gap's sake, that's going to be the new, like, hammerhead gap in the centre of the hull. People are just going to whinge about it. But yeah, there's some very interesting kind of details here. I mean, you've got these kind of struts on this side. You've got these kind of vertical silos, almost like this church organ effect at the top, which could very well be, given the fact that we've seen something like this for the Ironclad, it appears, is some sort of vertical launch system. Could be that too. So yeah. It needs to fit through wormholes. It does, but it could fit through wormholes as a cube. Right? It doesn't need to be streamlined. Why two engines on the bottom of the structure? I know what they're going to say. That's rather cool, right? I also think these are incredibly small and almost Drake-like. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to borrow design language from the Terrapin. Yeah, because the first thing these struck me as was Terrapin struts. Right, these sorts of engines. But there we go. They're too small to be VTOL, and they look like, like some of the ships, you just get something shot off, like the Connie had all its engine cells shot off as soon as you got into combat. This looks like the first thing that's going to get shot off this. Okay. This is the shield thing, and that's why I think this, I said, like, radar or some sort of science function, because this, to me, looks more like potentially the radar, although I could be wrong, and that could be something else. Because I did try to, I'm just going to manipulate this a little bit. I did try to have a look underneath, and it doesn't look like it's necessarily set up for people to go inside it, right? So, yeah, it looks like that. Looks like, with the paneling here, it looks like this is going to be your crew quarters, mess deck, kind of your kind of key, as you would call it, the superstructure within a warship. Looks like that might be the key areas, because you've got a lot of kind of windows and stuff on that. And windows on ships, it's not, apart from the bridge, it's generally not something you tend to see. Maybe the captain's cabin will have some on a British or a US warship. Maybe the officer's mess. And by windows, I mean portholes, right? I mean, like that. However, there are some warships out there, Russian ones particularly, that have a lot more portholes and a lot more areas on their ships. So it's not unprecedented for there to be windows on warships. So yeah, look for docking ports, he said. I saw a pic of this with the tower sloped back 30 degrees, and it did fit the rest of the ship more. Yeah, I think, potentially you could do something here. It just feels very chunky. And we'll have a look in a second. You'll see something like you'll see it against the Bengal and the Javelin, and it looks overweight. And trust me, as someone who's overweight, I know about these things. So yeah, there is that. How many decks? Well, I mean, that's the bridge, right? And there's every chance that the bridge will be 2 decks. right? And that seems to be borne out by that bit. Maybe, I mean, maybe that's just rule of cool. But very much like the front of the Bengal or the Javelin, where the windows are not necessarily just one deck, I think that's potentially multiple. So that might be two. This thing is going to be huge. So yeah, we can always come back to this. You said look for docking ports. Good question, well asked. I don't know. Maybe this bit here. It's not immediately obvious, is it? There are too many bits that kind of stick out at the moment. I mean, is there something down after? No, that's far too thin. I wonder how many they'll allow to be sold. Good question, McD. No answer for that whatsoever. And no answer on price either. I can take a stab, but there has to be something on the inside of the internal structure, and Kitsune says, that makes sense for all of that volume. I feel like those hangers could go all the way through. I mean, potentially. The height is definitely interesting, right? It's almost like the height was required. If you look at something like the Bengal and the Javelin, they are far flatter than this. Yeah. I mean, even the Javelin is about 2/3 the depth of this thing. So I think there's something there that they'll need to that requires that depth potentially. So there we go. So McD reckons 4,500 war bond, 5,000 credit, 5,000 I've heard bandied around quite a bit. I don't know. I think because it's at the upper end, they might go a little bit more expensive. In the same way that we've seen things like, the kind of Perseus and the Polaris go up in price quite significantly for being up at the end. I think they're potentially going to do very much the same thing with us. I had to go get my mouse back then. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure because they've got more of these kind of circular structures sitting under these turrets here that don't look too dissimilar from these. Although they look smaller. So it's kind of interesting to see what that might be. I guess these are just things that we're going to have answered when it comes out. This is the last manufacturer, I think, to be displayed. Although we might well get a video. I'd imagine we would get a video to explain a ship of this size. And more importantly, of this cost. I think they're going to need to talk about it to justify it. Because otherwise there's going to be a lot of people buying it blind without real understanding of what it does. Or what it's supposed to do. What their thoughts are for it and all that sort of stuff. I'm just having a cheeky peek inside. I don't think we are going to see anything here. But yeah, I mean, they very much look like hangar doors, don't they? Hangar bays and hangar doors. Oh, that looks like a docking port, doesn't it? That there. Does that look like it's a docking collar to you? Certainly does to me, so where does that come out? There. Interesting. Okay, so that's there. So it's just inside of those pods. That's going to make docking really, really interesting. So there's that. What have we got up here? So is that mirrored on both sides then? We got one there, and yep, we got one there. Okay. What do we got up front here? I feel like a detective. This is quite good fun. Hey, Nicodemus. Yeah, it's a flying cannon. It'll mess you up and take focus off the mothership. I mean, this thing is the mothership, right? Until we get the ability to put the build the Bengal in game. Interesting. So that, I think, is just the turret ring for the large. Oh. Hang on, what have I done? What have I done? Ah! There we go. Yeah, that I think was just the turret ring for this thing, right? Okay, and then the last trip, I guess we can go into the bridge and see what's happening in here. Oh, there you go. There's also docking collars back here, look. There we go, there's another docking collar. So at the rear of the bridge, at the rear of this platform. 1, 2. Interesting. Okay. And that's the bridge area, potentially. Interesting. So, in the grand scheme of things, it's a fast capital. I think they're guns. I'm late again going off the title. It's ugly, and I agree. Was for the moment thinking I was the only one that was thinking that. That's where I was hoping it would have them right on the tower. Yeah, it's a bit interesting. I'm not kind of oversold on some of the design. I just think it's, compared to a lot of the other ships, I think it's kind of jarring, right? In places. And this is going back in. This is still inside the superstructure here. Look, is the intent that people can go and walk out? Lol. Yes, it is. So you can actually walk out and magnetize bits on the top. Is that the intention? Elevators? Strange. So yeah. There's a lot of detail that you can kind of glean from this. I mean, so these sections at the back, these almost trenches, right? Like armored wings, I guess they could be. Like these bits here. It does look like they've thought about how they'll work. Oh, I wonder. Does that actually slide out on a rail system? It looks like it does, right? Is that what that is? It connects at the back and then slides out. Yeah. Excuse me. There's a stairwell in those indented sections on the bridge. Where's that? I mean, that's a hell of a climb, right? Yeah. I mean, some of them certainly look like they'll fold away. I mean, the side ones don't. Those ones look like they're pretty much staying put. Although, I mean, I suppose they could go away as well. I think they'll retract. I think they'll still. What they'll do is they'll stick out. So you'll see them. They'll almost look like wings when they're not engaged. These ones, I think, are just gonna. They'll extend, but they'll still be visible. You know, once they're in their kind of quote unquote retracted mode. But yeah, interesting. Maybe this is a more stealthy capital. Yeah, so the Battlecruiser moniker then. I don't think they're going for what the historical thing would tell us on a Battlecruiser. Okay? Little history lesson for you using my kind of knowledge of the history of battleship design through my time in the Navy. And basically, what happened is the end of World War One. You had a couple of different classes of ships. Okay, battleships were huge, incredibly well armored, incredibly well armed, but slow. Kind of 18, 19 knots, not much more than that. You then had cruisers, and cruisers were not as armoured, not as well armed, but they could go up to 30 knots. So they were much quicker. And unless they actually wanted to engage, they could very quickly outpace and get out of the range of battleships. I was about to say outrange, and that's not right because battleship weapons had longer range. But they could get out of the way of battleships fairly quickly. They were also much harder to spot because they had a lower profile, they were smaller, and I don't need to explain that principle to anyone. And then you had destroyers and other such things. Kind of frigates and corvettes and that sort of stuff. And the definitions around those are a lot more kind of loose and open to interpretation. What then happened, between World War One and World War Two, naval architects looked at the idea of something called the battle cruiser. And what they said was, hey, what if we took the speed of a cruiser, mounted battleship weapons to it, but everything else stayed? So it would sacrifice that armour for the speed of a cruiser. Therefore, anything that it didn't want to fight, it could get away from, and anything that it wanted to fight couldn't get away from it very effectively, other than like destroyers and stuff, which could go crazy quick. Okay, that's what battle cruisers were. Unfortunately, by the time that World War II rolls around, you've got pocket battleships like Graf Spee, you have ships like Bismarck and Tirpitz, who completely obliterated the idea of battle cruisers, pretty much, because they were also able to do incredibly high speeds. And the difference between a ship, say, like the Bismarck, and the faster cruisers of the time was maybe 6 or 7 knots, which is massively different to the 13, 14 knots difference between the old battleships and cruisers. So that's the history lesson. That's where that came from a military perspective, and that's why here a battle cruiser is kind of more of a function by name than it is by its function, as it were, because we're not having to run away from battleships because they don't exist. At least, not as far as we're concerned. So yeah, I mean, you might have to run away from some fairly sizable Vandal ships, but that's about it. So that's where the battle cruiser thing came from, anyway. Just to clear that up. So there we go. Lewis Tiger Fox says, I do wonder what's up the rear door. Cargo bay, I imagine, but it seems there's a lot of space there given its size. Interestingly, we'll have a look at a couple of the other things as well. Just while we're talking about other ships, okay, here's what we'll look at with this one. So this is the size comparison. Okay, this is the Javelin versus the Odin versus the Bengal. Okay, and this is why part of me says I'm not as much of a fan. Now, I know it's lacking a lot of surface detail. You look at the Javelin and the Bengal there, and they're pretty detailed models, and then you look at the Battlecruiser, and it's all flat panels and all that sort of stuff. But I just think if you look at the work they've done with the bridge, the Javelin bridge is interesting. It's off to one side, it's recessed back. You look at the Bengal, that's a very interesting design of bridge, right? It's got an almost like Cylon aspect to it, of that large visor at the front, the big set of windows. I get it. I'm not saying it doesn't fit. I'm just saying that it feels... When I first see it, the ships that spring to mind are not the ships of Star Citizen. The ships that spring to mind is either the spaceship Yamato, or, in World of Warships, they do those weird space versions of ships, and there's actually a port where you can display it in space. That's what sprung to mind. So yeah. Don't know. But it's okay. It's all right for people to not like the look of something, in the same way that it's fine for people to like the look of something. I'm just saying that this is not screaming for me the look of a battleship, and not that or the battlecruiser from Star Citizen. Not that I was ever going to be in a position to buy this anyway, but I'm not kind of gutted that I can't own one. So there we go. The Odin look great. Looks great. Come on, says Bagger Pops. Possibly. I know Chavez thinks I'm wrong as well about that. It's fat because that little bit of bottom is its snub. I'm going to call nope on that. I'm most concerned about the in-game use scenario other than full-out war. It's a bit funky that the Odin looks a bit like a submarine with the guns retracted. I mean, I guess something's got to look like a submarine, right? But I know what you mean. I've seen that image as well, and I get it. I get where you're coming from. We might end up with some in the org anyway. You're not wrong. It raises the value of the Anvil brand for me. I don't want anything this big, though, says Matt P. Yeah, absolutely. The Redeemer doesn't really scream Star Citizen either, though that one was designed by Fan Tournament, so yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I was around when the next great Starship thing happened, so I guess watching those designs happen, for me, was a little bit... Because I watched it develop, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not just a, ta-da, here you go, watching all those ships develop and then slowly be eliminated. If anyone's not seen that, by the way, highly recommend it. Next Great Starship on Star Citizen's channel. It's a great series to watch. They started out, was it 8 teams, I think? And it basically came up with a design brief and then slowly eliminated week by week or couple of weeks by couple of weeks the individual teams until they got to the Redeemer, which was kind of cool. I will die on the snub hill, said Socially. Enjoy that. Be fun to explore a derelict Odin overrun with alien creatures. You're not wrong. That would be fun. I like that idea. Avi says, I will say I wish the Odin was a little bit more compressed vertically. I don't know how thick it makes it look. A flatter and longer ship profile just looks better. Yeah, I have a feeling... Coming on to the gameplay aspects of this, I have a feeling that this is going to be more a mobile org base, right? Yes, of course it's going to be able to do all the shooty shoots, but I also think it's not going to be maneuverable at all. I think seasons will turn faster than this thing. So in terms of combat, it's going to be something you put in the middle and then use as a mobile fighting position, as opposed to a ship that uses maneuver as part of its arsenal, right? It's basically going to be, I'm going to plant myself here and now I'm an area denial weapon. That, to me, strikes what the Odin's going to do. I think this is potentially going to have the ability to have its own trade. Maybe it's got its ability to uplink to things like the World Trade Division computers, so you can figure out where you go and trade stuff, because this thing is going to have to go and buy and keep itself maintained and stocked. And if you're going to send people off on supply run missions, you're going to need to know where to send them. And that potentially, I've just thought about this actually, so that potentially might be what this thing is at the back, right? So maybe that's why. Oh, I wonder, is that connected? Is that what that is? Does that turret go like in and then down that way? What I was thinking was maybe this is what this is freight elevators. So you get ships docked, and you bring cargo off internally and then down into the hull. Maybe that's what that bit is, but I don't know because it kind of extends out here. Although maybe the whole thing is a cargo rail, right? So you mount it to the cargo rail and then it retracts down, kind of like a tank track or something like that, like a RAS winch for those of us that are, you know, previously Navy. It looks like it might be that sort of stuff, right? So yeah, Okay, Gamer says the only reason people think the Odin looks cool is because it's massive and massive guns. Big ships always get a pass and their ugly exterior designs. Yeah, I mean, I can see some of the appeal. I think I've got to agree with what Avi says. She's too wide, too chunky, and just being studded with turrets. I think that's the problem at the moment. Is it's a very early on in the concept process, and all we've got is hull, engines, and turrets, plus a couple of docking bits, and then kind of looks cool bits that stick out the side. And that's not necessarily representative of what we're going to get later, because all you're seeing, compared to all the detail of other ships like these, where you've got other bits that very clearly aren't that sort of stuff, you know, like these bits down here, for example, the plates that the turrets are raised up on, you know, all that sort of detailing adds to the look of the hull and makes it look more realistic, if that's a word I can use, but more thought out. There's more purpose to everything. We don't have that with the Odin at the moment, because it's just a very blocky concept. But there is no amount of paneling and detailing on the external that's going to get around the fact that she's thick. Boy, she's thick. So there we go. You think it retracts all the way, says Sergeant Teddy Bear? Possibly. Beige says, if it was aerodynal, it would be a battleship instead of a battlecruiser. Yeah, and I think that's why, because battlecruisers don't make sense if battleships don't exist. Because they weren't an individual design. They were a design, and that's why I brought up the history bit. They were a design very specifically to bridge the gap between two existing classes of ship. And that's why battlecruisers ceased to exist effectively post World War II. Because all of a sudden you had ships that were almost as fast as cruisers, but are battleships. So there's no point in having a ship that's just as fast as a cruiser, like the Bismarck, as heavily armed as the Bismarck, but with none of the armour, because it can't trade blows with the Bismarck. So, yeah, that's why we saw battle cruisers and stuff drop off massively. Now, there are, you know, things like cruisers, like the Kirov, the old the old Russian ship, were arguably battle cruisers, but not in the traditional sense. So, yeah. Socially says, this is the coolest capital ship design. It's okay. It's okay, Socially. You can be wrong. It's fine. So there we go. Big door at the back might be for landing cargo ships for resupply. Very possibly. And I think what we've got to do is stop. So not stop. That's wrong. That's not what I meant. Sorry. Misspeak. Rewind. What we've got to do is think of the Odin as more than just a ship. The Odin is a mobile base, and therefore things that we might want to see on stations, we might also see in the Odin. So, for example, you might see a permissions area where you can have other ships that are not part of your org dock with the ship, and then there's doors they can't get through and stuff like that. For example, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm saying that, obviously, if you're in the middle of nowhere, taking on supplies from a supposedly neutral group is better than not being able to resupply it, and all of a sudden it's just floating in space, or everyone on it starves to death. Right? So it's that sort of stuff. Maybe the ability to, I don't know, conduct better repairs. It might well have crafting. It might have more in-depth medical facilities. I'm still firmly of the belief that they're going to decouple, separate tier 1 med beds and the ability to respawn. Maybe this is a respawn facility. For a whole bunch of reasons. I am Coffee Guru. Welcome in. Does it come with a huge space break and parking sensors? If not, we're in trouble, mate, aren't we? Because, yeah, I've seen people try to park other stuff. This thing's going to be carnage. So yeah, I'm still convinced that massive panel on the rear underneath is the main thruster is some kind of door. Agreed. I think I think what that is likely to be, like we said, is that will open and then potentially we'll have a ramp extend out of it. So the flat bit, because obviously it's not gonna touch down like that. I think, or it might well be that it opens in the same style, because a ramp doesn't make sense if it's not going to land. So it's not going to be a ramp, is it? It might be more the same style as the Crusader doors, the Hercules, that it opens like that. That'd be kind of cool, like you say, to allow cargo and other ships in. That makes sense to me. I mean, I'm not buying the snub thing, because where do you fly it from? I'm not buying the snub thing. I know you said you die on that hill. I mean, you're welcome. RIP. I'm not buying the snub thing. But the rest of it, yes. And I think up here, obviously, you know, this is all going to be weapons areas, whether these are torpedoes and that ends up being huge missiles, or whether that's missiles and these are just, like you say, retro thrusters or something else. I mean, you could effectively have 3 different sizes of 1, then 2, then 3 up front. It's hard to tell at this point. So, yeah, there we go. You have to remember that this is just World War II in space. It is, 100%. But I don't see any reason why the battlecruiser doesn't just fulfill the battleship role at this point. We've also got, so for those that remember I'll go and find it in a minute if we need to. For those that remember, there is, or there are rather, a bunch of different ships in the Squadron 42 demo. They appear to be cruisers, not battleships. Okay, I'm going to have to go and show you this now, aren't I? Because I think people will be like, but that means the cruisers are bigger than the battlecruiser. Yes. Yes, it does. So bear with me just a second. I'm going to go find what I'm talking about, and I shall show you for why I think that. Damn it. I've got the windows open again because it's warm now, and now it's the bugs. We were doing fine all summer. It was cold. I had the window shut. Now the windows are open and all the lights are on. The bugs are like, ha ha, that place. Thanks. So there we go. Let's have a look. Squadron 42. I don't know what we're going to get here, but let's have a look. Bonk. This is right at the end. So there's a bit in here where I think you get the first fight, and then he starts talking to everyone, telling them what to do. There we go. So this is the bit that I'm in here. So we see a ship. The Argus is the ship that the Kingship cuts the stern off of, right? Okay, and what I think you'll see here, just about...
Argus, shift your position back and drift 8 degrees off x-axis. That should bring that Moiler into your field of fire. Corvers, redirect to fill the gap and take those gunboats up.
So I don't know if you can see it there, but that interestingly, that says carrier, right? But everything else, Corvus, that size with the double turrets on top, you can see here, just about, it says cruiser. Let's see if I can just tidy that image up. There you go. Cruiser. Okay. So that's the interesting bit. And as we can kind of see, it looks slightly smaller than the Bengal, but not hugely. It looks that way. It looks that way. And that's why I said earlier, it's part of why I said earlier, yes, the battlecruiser only exists because the battleship and the cruisers were things. But I've also said that this is why I don't think we can necessarily take the battlecruiser role and play it as, and think that it's going to necessarily play out as such, because
integrity.
Just going to go back a bit.
Fire, Corvers.
I'll try and catch it.
Redirect to fill the gap and take those.
But yeah, that says cruiser. That says cruiser. That one. It says, I think, either F carrier or L carrier, the Argus, which would make it fleet carrier, which makes sense because you can see the front is slightly different to these two, and also the engine array on Argus is slightly different to the other two, right? These are very... Integrity and Corvus are obviously sister ships of the same class. You have Argus here, and that looks different again. So maybe that's now the Pegasus class. Maybe the Pegasus is going to be something different, right? Because there are some very old concept images of the Pegasus floating around. We haven't seen those for ages. So there we go. There's that bit. We'll go back to this now. So yeah, and then when you come to then the size comparison, yeah, you can see that even if, hey Jabba, even if they are similar sized, you know, that the integrity and Argus and Corvus, all that sort of stuff, they're not going to be as small, I don't think, as the Battlecruiser. Which is interesting. So there we go. Hey, widget. Yeah, we are looking at the Odin and all that sort of stuff. There's another image of this that I wanted to show. This is the sneak peek. Okay, and the caption that went with this is, I think it's Weaponry of the Gods or Arsenal of the Gods, something like that. Odin, obviously, being a god, this very much looks like that these are the weapon systems. These are the weapons that go with those huge turrets that we've got, potentially. Yeah. This may well be at the bottom of the ship. You know, we saw that turret ring. Quite how that loads or whatever, I have absolutely no idea. Okay. What I can tell you is on a warship, for example, the Mark 45 or the 4.5 Mark 8 gun, which is the gun on the front of UK warships, has a ring feed feature. Okay, so basically it comes in, the shells go round on a feed and then are taken up into the gun. This is a circular system, and you've got some sort of, I don't know whether these are hoists to lift the shell up, so once this shell's been fired, it lifts the next shell into place and the next shell's lifted up. I don't know. This is concept art, right? What just strikes me is how empty and open this looks. But maybe you start up here and then it takes you down into the gun, or, you know, down through all of this. So as you go down in the chair to the turret, you watch all the shells go past you. That's very cool, very cinematic, very on brand for Chris Roberts. So it might be that sort of thing. Maybe this is the feed feature here. You've also got these really weird kind of almost like 30mm cannon belts that are massively oversized, and I have no idea what they do unless there's another arm out here. And is there one attached to that? It doesn't look like it. But yeah, they look a bit... Again, there's a lot... It's really hard to separate what they're trying to tell us to the function that they've kind of... their intent at the moment, and what will actually end up just being rule of cool stuff. So, there we go. The ship looks like a naval vessel with its turrets and superstructures. Gorgeous to this ex-Navy serviceman. Juan, I'm glad you're enjoying it, mate. I'm glad you like it. Badger says, check the broadsword. Idris is a destroyer, yes. And destroyers, like, there's a whole bunch. So, gunboats, frigates, destroyers were used interchangeably during the First and Second World Wars. There was a naval treaty that absolutely no one adhered to at the time as well, which was trying to stop people rearming from the First World War. It was called the Washington Naval Treaty, and it tried to put the limit on tonnage, number of hulls, size of weapons, all that sort of stuff. And it's about as close as we ever came to saying, this is what makes a battleship, this is what makes a destroyer, this is what makes a cruiser. And of course, everyone then started to ignore it. And then it got really confusing, because what one country will consider a cruiser, another one will consider a light cruiser, or an armoured cruiser, or a fast cruiser. So yes, there's a lot of not delineation between the types of ships. The other thing is as well, just going back to the idea of cruisers being larger than battle cruisers, the only reason that might happen, or sorry, not the only reason, a compelling reason for that to happen might be that's a battle cruiser of old, massively updated in design, but things tend to get bigger over time, right? So that was a battle cruiser like in the Perseus day, just updated with the design language, and the ships that we have now are much bigger because everything's getting bigger. And hey, that was a battlecruiser back in the day. We're not going to give you the modern ones, because why would we give you lot the modern ones? It could be something like that. But that's a lot of hand-wavium and trying to make things go away. So there we go. Is there any news about the in-law timeline of the Odin? Is it designed in response to Vandal example? Literally just covering that, Eve. No clue. Nothing at the moment. It's interesting to see them seemingly have parts separated, like some look like warheads and some look like the whole shell. Yeah, it's interesting there, isn't it? So you've got this line here that may well be something around there, you know, that then it connects into the shell. It's a good spot. It's a very good spot. I initially, when I saw this, if it wasn't for the shell direction, went, is this thing got something under it that fires down onto the planet, like an orbital bombardment thing? But then the gun would go where the dude in the seat's going, right? So that didn't make sense. And of course, there's also nothing on the 3D model to support that at all. A battlecruiser was a fast, lightly armoured, heavily armed vessel. This is more a battleship than a battlecruiser. Yeah, we were just covering that in terms of where the battlecruiser sits at the end of World War One as opposed to the beginning of World War Two. I don't think it compares straight out. I think it's a battlecruiser in name only. I don't think it's trying to do that sort of stuff. I mean, it might be faster than, say, a Bengal. You'd hope it would be because it's smaller, but I don't think it's trying to fit that role, right? Not ammo beds, in my opinion, says Jabba. More like power cables that go up and down with the above platform. Yeah, maybe something attached to arms or things that we can't see, because it's not immediately clear. That's why I'm like, maybe it's some sort of belt feed, because it's not clear what it's attaching to. It's not attaching to this thing, because this is this side of like this upper walkway, and that's the other side of the upper walkway. You can tell because the light's hitting this side of the belt, and it's hitting the facing side of this. So, yeah, it's further away. I can play devil's advocate and say we don't yet know the speed or armour of the Odin. Maybe it's less armoured than the Javelin. It might be. And again, I think that's why taking it as a battlecruiser, possibly. Yeah, or, sorry. Yes, it's a battlecruiser. Trying to determine what it's going to be, how punchy it's going to be, and what its role is, based on historical battlecruisers, possibly not as productive as we might hope it would be. Wooby, there ain't shit ugly about that ship. It's okay. You're allowed to be wrong. There's bits of it I'm not a fan of. Right? I think for a lot of people it's like when the Carrack got fat, it didn't bother me at all. This thing feels like it's the post-Carrack, the post-release Carrack, post-release Odin as opposed to the pre-release, that it was going to be a lot thinner, a lot more sleek than this. And then, you know, someone just let it go and eat barbecue for 6 months. That's what this one feels like. So, yeah, sorry. Medium tanks versus cruiser tanks all over again. Yeah, I'm less up on my armour, but yeah. I think it's the same confusion as saying there, John. They can't make a bigger ship with more crew, but have less HP than Javelin. It won't work. Agreed. So yeah, with the new claim timers, this will probably take a week to claim and cost a planet. Very possibly. Retro Crow, welcome in. Pete the Fat Dog, hello buddy. I get to watch battles live instead of pre-recorded. Welcome in. Glad you can make it, my friend. I'm doing all right. I've not drunk too much of my cider. When we get through a little bit more of this, I'm going to start not making a lot of sense. So it'll be fine. We've read too much into the model, in my opinion. It's there to support sale and will no doubt change to suit the role, as they describe it during the sale. Yeah, so my tour, and I'm kind of repeating myself now, so I'm just going to say this and then draw the line under it, and we'll move on to something else. Is that the battlecruiser taking what they historically were and applying it to this doesn't make sense because there aren't battleships in the game. So the whole point of a battlecruiser was to take the speed of a cruiser and the weaponry of a battleship and go, I can now hunt down cruisers with vastly superior weaponry and yet run away from battleships because I don't have the armour to be able to trade shots with battleships. By the time things like Bismarck and Tirpitz hit the hit the field, the question then became, well, what's the point? Because now we have battleships almost as fast as cruisers. So they now have the speed of the battleship, or of a cruiser. They have the armament of a battlecruiser, but they have the armor of a battleship. So the battlecruiser became irrelevant. So yeah. Okay. Sail, make big, and add many guns. Agreed. That. We can only guess its punch based on the size of its guns. It has many, many large guns. Yeah, I think so. What's interesting there is if we go back to this one, okay, is this thing down here, we know is the Goliath. We know it's a size 12 quad railgun. Those turrets are not as big as this. And you actually hear, I've closed the window. You actually hear in the Squadron 42 demo, Mark Strong say, strip safety the guy from the Goliath. We're going to have to hit him close. We're going to want them live on launch. And as he says that, it cuts to the Goliath coming down, descending from the bottom of the ship, and the barrels extending, which is why I think, funnily enough, with the battlecruiser, the barrels will extend and retract in order to go flush with the hull. Yeah. So the Goliath is a size 12 quad railgun, so those aren't going to be size 12s. I'm guessing. So there we go. It might be that they're size 12, like, ballistic cannons, because ballistic cannons aren't railguns. It might just be that railguns are bigger across the board, but they are significantly bigger. So there we go. Rash, welcome in, buddy. Carriers killed the battleship era. Odin's primary coverage against fighters is probably to be provided by fighters. 100%. I would also imagine this thing is going to be riddled with point defense turrets. Which is weird on its own since a railgun has no range safeties. Yeah, I think that's just a really cool line to say, right? It's, there we go. I'd really like a spaceship that's designed like an actual spaceship one day. Yeah, I would as well. The Zeus Mark 1 might end up being that, because they talked about there potentially being rare cases where you can find not necessarily workable ones, but you can find old stuff in the verse. And the Zeus Mark 1 strikes me as the thing that's going to be closest to an old style spaceship, or like a modern day spaceship. They say it's a size 12 quad railgun. Really, it's a need just duct tape to the bottom of the Bengal. Yeah, absolutely. Depends on what the railgun is firing, very possibly. Actual spaceship, yep. Which is weird on its own. Sorry, yes, I read that bit out. So yeah, I just hope they can justify the chunkiness, having a massive interior hangar, or else it's going to be a massive apartment complex. It is. And just looking at that, I mean, we already know the Idris is a pain in the backside to navigate around. That's the Javelin, which we've had a run around in terms of the tours and stuff, and that's even worse to get around. This thing is going to be crazy. It's going to be bonkers. So yeah. And also, I mean, if you think this thing's got internal hangars, multiple ships, and it's thinner, it's almost like there's something in there that needs to take up that amount of vertical space. Because is it just cargo space? Well, the Bengal needs more than that, because it's not just dealing with itself, it's dealing with far more internal ships and stuff. It needs its own, organic kind of search and rescue capability, even if that's just like adding cutty reds and Anvil, Terrapin medics and all that sort of stuff. It needs to carry them on board by itself. Just like an airport needs fire trucks. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. And then Armament of the Gods, this thing, yeah. It very much looks like it's going to be ballistic cannons for the Odin, if that's what this is. Care to wage on the crew? I reckon there's going to be a couple of parts for the crew. Sorry. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back to this one. So, very quickly, we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 large turrets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10 smaller turrets. 10. Yeah. We got bridge. We got flight deck. There's going to be, I think there's going to be 2 carrying capacities. There's going to be the crew to run the ship in and of itself, and there's going to be all the extraneous crew for the fighters or whatever it can carry on board, flight deck crew, cargo crew, all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's obviously going to be bigger and, you know, larger than the Javelin in terms of crew complement as well as in size. 125, 150. I mean, so here's the thing with it, right? Is yes, people are going to go, look at the size of it. It's double the internal space of the Javelin. Therefore, you know, you can easily go 160. Honestly, who out there is going to be throwing more than 150 people at one of these things? I can't see it. Hey, Stefan. Good to see you. Side-to-side hangar, very possibly. It might be that you have hangar bays here and then a larger internal space. So maybe that's what part of this is. Maybe it actually drops down so the fighters come in and then can move off in different directions into different, like, parking grids. In very much the same way that you've got, like, the central runway on a carrier, and then you've got the aircraft parks off to the side, yeah, in different spots. That is the name in the British Navy, by the way. It's 1 spot, 2 spot, 3 spot, refers to specific aircraft positions on deck. So just so you're aware. So that might be the same, that you can consider each of these a runway, and then you have various parking bits off. That might explain some of the size. It also bears interesting kind of implications for the Bengal, that the Bengal itself might need to get a lot chunkier, and that's already a ridiculously big ship. Okay, in terms of cost, I'm going to go higher. I reckon they're going to want $6,000 for it. So that's around here. 555 war bond, $6,000 flat out. But yeah, somewhere like that. Because the bigger ships, we've seen bigger price increases. They've really surprised us with things like the Aurora Mark II being the same price as its predecessor. They've surprised us with a lot of things like the Prowler Utility being $140 there or thereabouts, less than its combat counterpart. We've had the Anvil Terrapin Medic be less or the same price as the other Terrapin. So they've done pretty well, I think, by us on price and stuff. The Clipper was cheaper than a lot of people were expecting. The Wolf was cheaper than a lot of people were expecting. But the ships at the top end tend to go more expensive. That price increase on the Perseus and the Polaris, they were significant increases. So I think that's going to be the point. I think they're also... They're trying to be very restrictive about who gets it, and we'll talk about that. Hey, Luna, good to see you. No, you're all good, Luna. I've been away. I've been struggling. I've been struggling to sleep, so I've been a bit of a miserable git. So I've been away the last couple of weeks, but it's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Minty Fizz says there's a point at which they'll run into payment processing issues. You're spending how much on what card nuked from orbit? You're not wrong. You're not wrong. That's exactly what's going to happen. So there we go. Okay, so here we go then. Right, the really good news is I've checked the time required, okay? So if we put this now, that's how long ago I loaded this page up, ready for the stream. If you put this in, this is going to be 5 p.m. UK time. Now the good news is, God, my hair's all over the place. The good news is 5 p.m. UK time, I can do that. Okay, so it might be that I come on as it happens, but I'll try to be on 15 minutes before the start of each one. So we have Drake Interplanetary, which will be the Bulldog. We've got Origin RSI and Kruger, which will be the Origin M80. We have the Misc Starlite coming out on the 18th. So we've got, is it Wednesday? Is it Wednesday or Thursday the 14th? I don't remember. So the 14th is Thursday. So we've got Thursday, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday. I'm thinking, is that about right? Yep. Okay, and then the finale. So I will go live at the beginning of every single manufacturer's day, so every other day I'll be here. And what I'll do is, because I'll be at work during the day, I'll actually put the reminder up the night before. Sort of sit there all day, ready to go. So if you want to be part of that, would love to have you here and we'll talk about it. Odin Racing variant, says Lewis. Nice, I like it. But yeah, and then as we go through of these, each of the ships then, before we do that, this. I did mention this briefly last time. If you watch 4 hours, I don't think you can see that, it's really small, but let's zoom in. If you watch 4 hours across Defensecon, you'll get this, the Tailwind flight suit. This is one of the dedicated piloting flight suits that allows you to tolerate higher G-forces than the other armor. So that's that. And then we have the ships that are being released. So very, very quickly, I'm not going to go into huge depth about these because we're going to get them on the day and I don't want to kind of shoot my shot, as it were, before they happen. But the Pitbull, which is smaller than the Fury, it's absolutely tiny. I don't think there's any surprise that this is coming out at the same time as the Ironclad Assault. Turns the Ironclad into a scary carrier when you can fit God knows how many of these on it. So that's kind of scary. As long as it comes with a working coffee machine and hot tub. I hope you're talking about the Odin and not the Pitbull. I wouldn't go into a Drake hot tub if you put a gun to my head. So there we go. So that's the Pitbull. That's coming out on day 1. We've then got day 2, the Origin M80. And what was really interesting was you saw on the video there are other guns to this. So we've got the guns on the window, but there's a very clear shot of it on the 4.8 patch report of it having 2 guns on each side. So not as undergunned as some people are expecting. This thing apparently is a heavy fighter. I have a feeling they have done what they do with so many of these ships. They've taken the wrong bloody angles for them. And yeah, it doesn't look great, does it? But I think it's going to be very, very nice when we see it up close. I think this is going to be some really nice styling. We also have the Starlite. This is the refueler from Misc. I saw a comment and I was like, yeah, all right, you've got a point. And it was a comment about the Starlite being another Misc refueler and people being a little bit disappointed because the Gemini is also Misc. And I kind of get that. I personally have no issues with it. I like the Misc industrial aesthetic. But yeah, I get why people might be a little bit upset by that. I'm interested to see what this looks like. So one of my stepping off points for my CCU chains is the Vulcan, and I'm quite keen to see that and how it plays out. So with that, you know, it'll be quite cool to see this as well. Right, I'm just going to put some music on in the background because the more I drink, the more I realise how much my voice pisses me off. So Origin is heart, says Marcus. Good, I'm glad you like it. Sergeant Teddy Bear says, hey, something I noticed about the Odin. On the front of the ship, it looks like there's something that pops out. If you compare it to the screen grab we've got, you can see a hollowed out space. Interesting. I don't want to keep going back to it, but we'll have another look, obviously, when it comes out. And we've still got another Sunday stream between now and then. So for the newbies here, for people I haven't seen before, welcome. Really good to see you. My name's Badges. I'm the proprietor of Drinkers with Gaming Problems. We're a group of primarily male, although not by design, just by accident, older gamers who really enjoy the game, focus on the game experiences rather than PvP, although we'll do PvP if it is forced upon us. And we're just here to enjoy the game and kind of also enjoy each other's company. We have a meetup every Friday, 9 PM UK time, where there's no recording, no one takes any video or anything, we just all whinge about a day. It's like being down the pub with your mates after a week at work, except we play Star Citizen and we're not all in the same pub, which is quite good fun. And Sundays I try to stream 9 PM UK time. So we've got another one of those coming up between now and the Odin. So we'll talk a little bit more about it then. Right. So that's... Oh, I don't want to click that. I don't know what I did there. Okay, the Tiburon. So I looked up how to say that. I've been calling it the Tiburon. That's not true. Tiburon is Spanish for shark. Okay, and this thing's kind of interesting. So, this is the shark with freaking laser beams. A size 10 laser on the nose. Okay, built into the center section here. It has a wing either side with turrets on it, I believe, with cannons, or is it these cannons here? Anyway, I'd rather just be told by CIG. I know there's loads of data mining goes on and people have a look at all these stuff, and I'm sure people in the chat will say the sort of weapon systems that it's got, but that's not my jam. Going into the numbers and stuff, you know, I'll wait until we get there, because we had that conversation with the Perseus where we were told that the size of the weapons was going up by 1. We all assumed that it was the smaller weapons because, oh my god, size 8s, and it turns out it was the size 8s. So I just kind of wait for CIG to confirm rather than anything else. But I know some people don't like it. Some people do. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to get hold of the hammerhead at its gold standard and the Tiburon. Am I saying that right? Anyone Spanish? Tiburon? Tiburon? Tiburon. I did have one of those like pronunciation things on, and I butchered it, so I didn't bother. But yeah, I kind of like it. Hey, thanks, Rash. I said it the first time. Fantastic. I like there's another ship in the Perseus class. Another choice is good. Absolutely. This is where the hammerhead is designed against fighters. The Tiburon is more larger ships. So this is going to be a fun thing to take up against the Mauler, I should imagine, at the Vandal Mauler that's coming with tactical strike groups. So yeah, interesting ship, very different, and my understanding is that the hammerhead is going to get up armoured quite significantly, in that it will be second only to the Aegis in its armour, obviously to try and keep a couple people interested in it, whilst it still suffers greatly at the hands of fighters and stuff, and it will, you know, with the weapons changes, with the armour changes, all that sort of stuff, we'll see how the hammerhead progresses. I think it's going to become quite an effective ship quietly, because not a lot of people are using it at the minute, but this is a very interesting different design, and I'm kind of excited to see where this one goes. I think this is my kind of one to watch for Defensecon. So yeah, Tiburon is probably going to have a big weakness against heavy fighter craft. Yeah, it's going to be like everyone thought the Perseus is going to be weak against fighters. The Tiburon is going to be weak against fighters too. Hyundai made one. I think it's funny no one can say it. Yeah, that's it. Well, because we anglicise it, right, and it's not an Anglo statement. Okay, so the PU monthly report came out as well, and I kind of had a link through here, and do you know what? One of the things here, I just kind of, you know, when you read it, and I just get frustrated, because it's like, what are you doing, CIG? So we'll have a look at this stuff in a second, but there was, I was reading something going, what are you, here we go. AI tech and features began April with various optimization tasks, including a refactor of the Hermite cubic spline implementation to achieve better performance. I have no idea what a Hermite cubic spline is. A major performance offender was also fixed in the derived version of the original spline code. I don't know what that is either. Used in cinematics. Work is currently underway to replace the current brute force arc linear integration, no idea what that is, with a more reliable set. The navigation octree memory was further optimized too. Good. That's 4 sentences, and I don't understand any of it. I'm not used to sitting there going, I feel stupid. I feel stupid. I don't... What are you saying, CIG? The f is that about? Don't get it. Anyway, there we go. So that's all a little bit weird. So we've got things like melee data, and I was like, ooh, more melee combat. There's news that the Bar Citizens, The one starting next month, the little item that you get for turning up, so someone will give you a code to redeem, is the Broken Vandal Spear display. And I was like, oh, maybe this is a kind of segue into melee combat in the verse, more of it. And it turns out I don't think that's the case, because in the next line it then starts talking about the Valakar and other animals. So there's an animal being worked on, which is good fun, and then we go on to ships. So a couple of interesting things came out of the Star Citizen Live this week, which are that we have the Raylan coming. We also have an unannounced non-combat alien ship arriving soon. So it says here, beyond Defensecon, because Alien Week is almost immediately afterwards, and they've confirmed this in the 4.8 patch report, the Gatak Raylan will be coming. It's only just coming up to its grey box review, so I'd imagine there's some crunch going on at CIG at the moment with that ship. Okay, but with the team making sure all areas of the ship are brought to the same high standard. A second unannounced ship continued through White Box, with more devs joining the project to help block out the interior. And I wonder whether that's the other alien ship that they mentioned. And then there's another ship, and they've talked about this a couple times now. Mocap, build out and make amendments to the in-game asset to suit the custom enter and exit animations. So they basically said, we're going to enter this ship in a way that we haven't seen before. So in the same way that, you know, we jump into a seat and we sit down and the seat either spins around or slides forward or just stays there in the case of fighters, you then have the animation that takes you into things like the Vandal Stinger and the Vandal Glaive, where you ride in like a sports motorbike pose. There's a new one coming. Ta-da! And then there's a grey box gate review in early May, which sounds like it's going to be the June or July ship. Probably July now, I'm guessing, with the alien ships. So that might be the July patch. Works progress with the Drake Kraken, and it sounds like there's some crunch going on again. So here's what they said. They also progressed with the Drake Kraken. Having passed White Box last month, the ship moved into Grey Box. Great. With special attention being paid to ensuring the asset is as optimised as possible. Fine. Something that big is going to cause slowdown around it because it's got so much to render. Fine. And then there's a direct quote here. With a ship this size, it's critical to ensure the time budget is being spent in the right places before it's too late. What do you mean too late? It's not like they're going to get to, oh, we didn't release it for Christmas because it wasn't ready. Oh well, put all that work in the bin. You just release it in February or March, right? So what do you mean too late? The Kraken's being rushed in for something, and that's really interesting because it's not tactical strike groups where a lot of people would think that would make sense, right? Ships, carriers. The Kraken's coming in for something. That's my guess. So there we go. The team also worked on integrating some of the bridge station and man turret concept work that was highlighted in this month's subscriber jump point. So someone went, hey, I made a cool picture and I put it in jump point. Now I'm going to put it in the ship. So that was fun. A couple of other things that have been mentioned. They've talked about, and I can't remember where it is, so I'm not even going to go looking for it. But they talked about a super heavy armor set. Is it up here? I think it might have been before the ships, right? Here we go. Animation progressed with an upcoming creature. Very cool. They're also working on a super heavy armor set that carries a large full auto weapon. I am really hoping this is the actual combat Atlas suits we were promised, not just the ICTY. I've got some duct tape and a gun, so I'm going to duct tape that to that and then turn it into... I'm really hoping it's going to be that thing. So, there we go. Splines are curves in 3D space. Matt's an intensive room for optimization. Got you. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that, because I'm just sat there going, So yeah, alien mining ship, possibly. That would be cool. I'm hoping that later on what they do is they go into alien stuff like that, because it would be really cool to go, oh, so you want to mine, but you don't like the way the human ships do it? Oh, here's an alien ship, and it's actually a different way of mining. So it's not just apply power, keep it in the green, don't blow yourself to pieces. they come up with a different way of doing that, which would be really cool. And I mean, that's going to be stuff that's likely going to be miles down the line, right? Where they're like, okay, we've done everything we can with mining. People don't seem to just like the interface, so let's introduce alien ways of mining, which is a completely different way of doing it, right? Not necessarily faster or more effective, just a different way to interact with that gameplay loop to get more people involved. I think that would be kind of cool. Badger's the spear on loan for the Reeves Military Museum. It might be on loan, but they're not having it back. I've decided. Hey, you guys remember the BMM? Yeah, right? Yeah, the BMM was just a PSYOP. That's what we've decided. CIG doesn't want to redesign an area a month before it's due. Not wrong. They don't want to have it optimised before they built it, bit of a mess to unpick. Yeah, exactly that. So, that's where we are with the ships and stuff. There is also, before that happens, they talk about an unannounced ship past its Lot Zero review, and it's due to have its final review in early May. QA began testing, ships fixed assorted minor issues, and downstream teams finalised some of the bespoke VFX and SFX. It's very possible, rather, that that's the Tiburon. Because Lot Zero is pretty much there, right? So yeah, there we go. Click, click. Okay, so that's where we are. So 4.8 then is really interesting because although it looks like here that we've, I'm just going to zoom out a bit. I'll tell you. I know you won't see it, but I'll tell you. So everything from the characters is committed. That's hairstyles and the tailwind suit, which is also the reward for watching 4 hours of streaming on Twitch. We have the transport system committed, item recovery vehicle loadouts. We also have tactical strike groups, refueling improvements, flight suits, and vehicle command module. They haven't yet said that they've committed ship hangar service, but they said it in the 4.8 patch report, which came out after the last roadmap update. So it might be that they've now decided to commit that, and we'll see that change in the next 2 weeks. QV extraction stations, that's the location for tactical strike groups, fine. Refueling missions and space combat missions, defend location, again, all talked about, not just during the 4.8 patch report, but during Friday's Star Citizen Live, which was all about flight model and flight gameplay and all that sort of stuff. So it looks like that stuff is almost there as well. Wicklow offerings, Aegis Hammerhead, we've got the 4 ships, plus the Odin concept being released. Well, 6 if you count the Ironclad and the Ironclad Assault. And then we have the crossbow and the plasma grenade and the FPS art refactor. So yeah, interesting. Now, if you're talking about the crossbow, I'm just going to skip through this very, very quickly. Oh, because we're going to Spectrum. But something I wanted to show you first, before we go to the haptics, is this. So, I don't know if you've got this, I haven't, so I don't know what it looks like, but if you've supported Shroud of the Avatar, whatever that is, at the Immortal Adventurer pledge level or above between 2012 and 2014, a special variant is waiting for you. So there you go. You get a special variant of the crossbow. So well done you. I have no idea what any of that means, so there we go. And then this stuff, which is kind of interesting. So in the same way that we had the surprise VR release, we also now have this, the haptic system support. And basically haptics is the stuff that allows you to feel impact. So a haptic system is built from motion actuators that mount under your seat or rig. Each actuator can produce 2 types of output: physical movement, pushing the platform up and down, and haptic rumble, which can range from subtle fine vibrations to deep reverberations that move the entire rig. A basic 2 actuator setup gives 2 degrees of freedom, roll and pitch, as well as vibrations and texture. 4 actuator configurations add more range and precision with a 3rd degree of freedom added, heave. Higher end setups running up to 8 actuators can support full sway, surge and yaw on top of that. And this is to do with D-Box. one of the leading manufacturers. So yeah, they've added this. So it doesn't the haptics, not in terms of like the suits that you wear that allow you to feel hits. I was wrong. This is the stuff that actually sits under your seat, which is probably a little bit far in terms of setup, even for me. So yeah, I won't be doing that. Not off my own back anyway. So there you go. I believe there are 8 hangars on the Odin, not 6. There are 2 in the front of the ship. Zoom in and you see what looks to be reverse thrusters are actually textured gates. Interesting. Not sure. We'll have a look. They look too small for me, unless they are literally some sort of snub that is that. So yeah. And I think, do you know what? We've managed it. With half an hour to spare. Although, to be fair, that half an hour was going to, or part of it at least, that half an hour was going to be me at the top of Area 18 until the game crashed. And I can, literally, as I was starting the stream, as the music kicked in, the game crapped itself and I wasn't about to go through all of that again. So, yeah. So there we go. So you reckon what these things here, these bits? These bits. Let's go through the other way. Good Lord. It's not the easiest to control, is it? So you reckon these doors here? That? I don't know. I think you're reaching. I'm not convinced. Not convinced. Oh, these bits here. Interesting. Oh, what have I done now? There we go. Ta-da. Oh, interesting. Good spot, sir. Yeah, they are. That's exactly what that is. That's exactly what that is. That's a hangar door, sir. Well, good spot. That's exactly what that is. That's not a reach. That's spot on. Well played. Well played. Which indicate, because, I mean, you look at the level difference, right, between those and the hangar doors, right? Which maybe indicates, I mean, they could be entirely separate. And that works. Right? So you got those bits there, which, you're right, that's textured like a hangar door. And then we've got those bits there. I mean, maybe they're not hangar doors. Maybe they're something else. They don't seem to actually be attached to anything, right? But I think they are. I think that's just part of the model. Interesting. Good spot, sir. Well, mate. Well played. Like that. Does that travel through the back like the Aegis hangar? I suppose it could. It's definitely the right level. So maybe the doors, like we say, open that way and that way, either interior or exterior, and you come flying in. Although that's far too high for that, I would suggest. If what you're getting in can fly out of that, why does it need all that space to fly in? Interesting. Yeah, that's what I think it is more. I think that's more kind of an access to a cargo area. If that's access at all, I think that's why it would be that, to allow larger ships to transfer lots of cargo across. But yeah, interesting. Potentially. Matt says, if there's that big a difference between ingoing and outgoing hangar doors, maybe there's an entire carousel elevator, an absolute stack of interior hangar spaces. Possibly. Although, interestingly, I do think you start to run out of space for things like cargo and whatnot. But yeah, really interesting. So 4 docking ports. 1, 2, and then the ones here. 3, 4. We've even got external areas where it looks like you can kind of walk out. There's one at the front. Is that the captain's cabin, you think? This bit here. No one's telling me that's not a doorway. I'm not buying that at all. And then, someone said something about a stairwell in here as well, right? So yeah, interesting. There's lots of question marks, and like I said before, I think the biggest thing about the Odin is make it more than a ship. Because there's some really interesting bits. You know, we'll go and do that now. Apologies for the skipping through the images, but let's go back to Spectrum. And I think I'm logged in. Concierge. So this is what they said about Founders Club. Okay. There's a couple of bits of the wording in here that are really interesting. Okay. At twice the size by volume of the Aegis Javelin. Makes sense. A select group of Star citizens dedicated to the principles of cooperative group play and positive impact. In other words, they don't want this to be a tool of going around and just smashing people. Not initially, anyway. Of course it's going to be a tool of going around and smashing people. You don't say that and then put a picture of the Arsenal of the Gods thing in and go, yeah, but this is peaceful. And that's not so much, right? But that, for me, is really interesting. These ships are built around crew, coordination, and the dedicated people behind them. How will you lead, organise, and use the ship to create impact for you and your crew? I kind of like that idea, that they are potentially somewhere between a big battleship or a big warship and an org base. But yeah. I mean, I've not applied for access. I don't intend to apply for access, but we'll see. This ship is for org leaders. It is 100%. Sports, mess hall, kitchens, bunk storage, lots more than just combat. Yeah, absolutely. The ability, I think, to coordinate missions, to create, contracts and all that sort of stuff. Things that are more organised. Maybe have mission givers on the ship. That sort of stuff. There's a lot more they can do with this. And, I mean, this is just off the top of my head after a bottle of cider. But there's a lot that they could potentially do to make this something that's more kind of than just a ship. So, yeah. Lots of stuff that they can get involved in there that will make it kind of fun, I think. Just going to throw this in as well. For people that remember the old Kickstarter advert for the ship. For the game, rather. I think ships like this will have room for all those utility ships you need somewhere in a fleet: shuttles, fire truck, tow truck, ambulance, fuelers, etc. 100%. With the recent increase in cost and recall time, I expect large ships will be used much more carefully in the future. That will balance things. Yes, absolutely. And it might also be that storing them becomes a bit of an issue as well. That you can only store them in certain locations, right? In exactly the same way that if you drive your car everywhere, you can park it pretty much wherever you want, right? In terms of garages will fit you, car parking spaces will fit you, all that sort of stuff. If you get one of those ridiculously big American-style RVs, you know, with sofas and fireplaces and a little car that comes out on a thing, that thing is not getting it parked many places at all. That thing is basically a HGV turned into a home. So that would make sense with this as well, that they are not just things that you can rock up with and do whatever you want. They are going to be the sorts of things that you'll be able to detect at 60, 70, 80k and get away from without ever having to deal with it. There we go. Just turn that down a bit because it's loud in my ear, and then I'll turn it back up for you guys. But I'm not actually turning it down because I clicked the wrong thing. Sorry, bear with me. Right, I'll turn it all the way down for me. And then put it back up for you guys. There we go. Ta-da! Charlie McCawson says, with the recent... sorry, I read that out. My bad. There we go. I'm almost at the end of the cider and it's already kicking in. Jabba says, with the amount of real money and time an org would have to invest, I can imagine real-life legal foundations being started with all that goes along with that. Real-life legal foundations? I killed the music. Go me. Well done. Yeah, so the it's kind of really hard. I think I'm really hoping that we get a video on it before it releases for two reasons. One, because everyone wants to know what this thing is going to do. But two, because even if you put it only at, say, only $1,000 above the Javelin, that is a significant investment. There are all sorts of real-world things that you can do with that money. Buy a car, for example. You know, and it will create some really, really awkward conversations about this thing didn't do what I wanted it to do. You know, you sold it to us with no information, and you know, distance selling regulations and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I just hope they handle it right, is what I'm saying. Concept subject to change, says Dirk McDuck. Yeah, absolutely. They probably should have done fleet org hangars and ownership before they did this one. I think yes. Are you talking about in terms of real world purchasing, AV? Because yeah, that I get. I mean, in terms of just as an in-game mechanism, I think they can absolutely get to the point where they do that. Excuse me, prior to, you know, implementing it in game, or have it, you know, somewhere about ready. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's a few years. I think they're going to have to potentially be on the quasi-dynamic server meshing before that comes out. Because there's someone made the comment right at the beginning, and I gotta say, I kind of agree with them, which is, yeah, but how are you gonna, you know, how are the servers gonna manage with that sort of load? You know, do they get a server to themselves? And I think that's a fair point. I don't think that's being unfair at all. So, yeah, right. In-game will definitely be faster, easier, but I do think this is the kind of ship that is useless if one person owns it. And oh, hey, he's offline, guess the 50 plus people will find something else to do. Yeah, and do you know what? There's a couple of things that I'm just gonna cover before we go, because I think they're quite important. The first one is, for those that didn't see it, for those that didn't see the live stream last week, CIG have confirmed that CitizenCon is cancelled this year. There is no con, not direct, not on Twitch, not in person, nothing. They have also repeated that Squadron 42 is going to be out this year. So that's the first bit. What was also very interesting that happened this week, and I didn't cover it because it happened the day after I did that live stream, in the Star Citizen Live, they've talked about one of the things that they're going to be introducing into the verse is the idea of potentially fast travel. So now, before anyone runs away at that, I'm just going to say this before I explain the rest of it. They have said this is an option they are looking at. It is not certain that this is going to happen. But they have now said that they are looking at a fast travel or a teleport to party leader option in quote unquote certain circumstances. So that might be a thing, it might not. Marcus says, why buy a house if you could have 3 or 4 Praetorian packs? I'm buying a house, I don't need the Praetorian packs. Thanks very much, I'll add them in game. It's pretty much waiting on org permissions. Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things. These are going to be the ships that something like, say, for example, Goon Swarm or Griefernet or whoever else bring out. And what they do is they actually man it around the clock. You've got an org that's got people in, you know, all the time, or a lot of time zones around the world. They log in and log out on the ship, and they keep it going with a genuine, like a real world watch roster, rota system, and that ship becomes a permanent org base. I think that's what that's going to do. So yeah. Ships bigger than Javelin are not storable in the final game. Once they are the verse, they stay and you protect them. I believe so, Widget. As Monster Avy says, if that's still the plan, that's it. But then again, like I've just said, there's a fast travel thing coming in, and they said initially that we wouldn't be able to fast travel. So there we go. Jabba says, if I'm sleeping overnight on that ship, what happens if the owner logs off? These are... well, if what Widget said is correct, that's the answer. The ship just stays in situ. So, yeah. And that's why Avy made the point about permissions and that sort of stuff, because if they haven't managed that, if the non-owner can't do things with it and you know, take it away to store and all that sort of stuff, there are potential, you know, serious issues that are going to arise of that. So, yeah. Badges, before you go, have you seen the loading screens for the point patches which turned up in the latest PTU build? I haven't, mate. If you want to send them me on Discord, I'll have a look. Chief Paranoid Officer. A long time ago, they talked about agent smithing, which is fast traveling, where you could take over a friendly NPC. Yeah, I think that was initially talked about for Squadron, not Star Citizen. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was... I hate summer here. There's wetlands just around the corner, so... and when they built, they decided to build on everything but the wetlands. Saw the little midges and bugs and stuff from the wetlands stay, and then they see houses with lights on and the windows open because it's warm. And then I spend the entire stream just like, I'm sure you can't see them, but I'm just trying to catch them out of midair. So I just look like I'm going nuts. Badger, since you mentioned griefers, I'm going to point out that the large orgs destroy games. Look at June Ascension. COG needs to limit sizes fast. I think... I think you're not wrong. I think large orgs can muck things up for other people. I also don't think that limiting sizes is the way to deal with that. Derp McDerp says, let me guess, no store credits for Odin? Unknown. So there we go. Repeating wrong, I don't know. What's wrong? It was Star Citizen. Agent smithing into NPCs in Star Citizen, was it? I don't know how that works. Yeah, I think that might be something that's fallen by the wayside. Because they were initially, or they did at one stage talk about it with Squadron 42, because they were also talking about things like PvP sliders and stuff like that, and that has obviously also gone by the wayside. Although, interestingly, I can kind of I can see now more how they would potentially do a PvP slider. I see more how they would be able to do that now with the game in the state that it's in at the moment, or the game at the stage that it's in at the moment, which they have control over what you see and what you don't. They're talking about, big fleet battles. They only stream in what's near you. Well, a PvP slider would be something like choosing what's streamed to you based on its hostility level. So if you go to I want one stage down from everything, then crime stat 5s aren't shown to you, and then not crime stat 4s, and then not crime stat 3s. Again, not suggesting this is a good way of them doing it. I'm merely saying that this could be one way that they end up implementing it. And then, when you get to Care Bear level of PvP slider, you only get people who have no crime stat and NPCs. Okay, so if you had 3 game packages, 2 could be NPCs that friends could control. Those NPCs that did drop off, just mention it faster, was in plans early on, yeah. And again, going back to NPC crew, that might be part of it. I have a feeling certainly NPC crew is going to be one of those things that's going to be past 1.0 at launch. It's going to be something that comes in afterwards. Even if not, agent smithing certainly will be, I think. So there we go. You go through the same character creation process as your player character, but then we'll have the option of handing off control to an AI as an additional bonus friends can drop in. Interesting. Yeah. So how do you control them for things like stealth missions? So if your friends haven't dropped in, how do you control them for stealth missions? What happens when you go through a door that closes behind you and stops you exiting, and the NPC's the other side of the door? Do they just teleport through and reappear with you? I guess that's what other games would do, right? So yeah, there's also some talk of agent smithing not happening at all anymore. Yeah, I think it's gonna be one of those things that they might say no for now, and they might come back to it. And this is the beauty of a game that they're going to develop in perpetuity, is they get to choose. And whatever goes off the menu, as it were, for now, might end up coming back a little later on. So that works. So yeah. The problem comes from them selling the game on the concept of NPC crew, agent smithing, AI blades, and PvP sliders, etc. Yeah, so AI blades, they're going to be a thing. I don't think that's a problem. It's gonna take a little bit of faff on the back end for you to switch it on and off. I don't think that's gonna be a problem. NPC crew might happen. Agent smithing probably not. I think the thing with NPC crew is actually going to be more work than people think, because I think just having an NPC crew and assigning them to a turret is going to be a bit underwhelming. I don't think that's the sort of thing that Chris will want to implement. I think he'll want a complex order system where you can tell them to go and repair something, or put out a fire, or load and unload stuff. And they'll want and that order system is going to take a lot of time to develop, and a lot of testing, and a lot of this, that, and the other. And then what about the permissions? So if you've got the captain, and the captain's giving orders, but the captain's now incapacitated, does that mean that NPC crew is useless? Can they nominate people on board to be the second officer and other officers and crew members, and give... You see where I'm going with that, right? So I think NPC crew and agent smithing are 2 very different issues. PvP sliders, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get them at all. I think, given how much they've talked about things like, hey, the best moments in this game happen when players are thrown into situations with each other, like Jump Down, like Xeno Threat, all that sort of stuff, then, the idea of being able to opt out of that, maybe not. So, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, modded servers, good luck with that, Blam. I think that's a long, long way down the road. I think that was one of the... At the times, it seemed like a good idea and a good thing to say and a good thing to potentially half commit to. I would be very surprised if that if that becomes a thing now. And again, I don't mean to be overly negative. I don't think it's going to be that stuff. There we go. Put some other music on in the background and not close it this time, so that'll be fun. So there we go. Yeah, so lots of stuff. I mean, this news this week, I think the news that CitizenCon canned for this year, Squadron 42 is still coming, is significant. Even if you are not interested whatsoever in Squadron 42, that's still going to be a significant piece of news for you, because once Squadron 42 is out and they've got through the initial bugs, which should be very, very quick because of the amount of time they've spent on polish, yeah, the expected shift of a lot of the design staff over to Star Citizen should mean that we see some really a continued trend of development within the game. I think it's now beyond kind of debate, from Stormbreaker to Onyx to Hathor to Rockcracker to the Vandal tech smuggler missions to, you know, tactical strike groups, and the stuff that we'll get the rest of this year while Squadron 42 is still being worked on. Instancing, progressive instancing, Siege of Origin, and the municipal works, Starware, Genesis, all that sort of stuff, Starchitect as it is. We're seeing some real progress now, and that wasn't the case a long time ago. There are now really pleasing kind of choices of things to do in the game, and I think that's really kind of, that's good news, right? So let's have a look. I'm just going to have a look at these very quickly. You might have to direct me on what I'm supposed to be looking at. So, because I don't want to spend too long sat here reading it. But yeah, so we got Xeno Threat coming as well, which is part of it. Obviously, Siege is going to come in July. And we're also going to see, because it's the only way that you can fit it in, is we're going to see probably a planet every major patch, even if it comes in one of the point patches between now and the end of the year. Because there are 3 major patches between now and the end of the year, and there are 3 planets. So, math. But yeah, it's been great fun talking through all the tactical strike groups and stuff with you guys. I think we just have not enough time to look at those loading screens, but we can do that again on Sunday of next week. Welcome in for all those that are first time here or first time chatters. It's been great to see. Great to see you again. If you enjoyed this, then you know where the subscribe button is. Every Sunday, 9 PM UK time. And like I said, throughout Defensecon, the day that things go live, 5 PM UK time, I'll be streaming hopefully about 15 minutes before to have a quick look at what's going on. But we'll go through Defensecon together, have a look at the new ships, figure out how awesome the Tiburon is, and how weird the Odin is. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying things like that. But I don't care. So, you know, whatever. This is just me filling the gap now whilst I try to find the correct screen so I can end the stream. You've been watching Jinkers of Gaming Problems. Thank you very much for stopping by. I'll see you soon.